Thank you very much, Patrick. So with that introduction, we move straight to the presentations. The next presentation is on an analysis of the relationship between the Millennium Development Goal 2 and the developmental state, the case study of South Africa. That presentation will be made by Professor Chitiga, assisted by Rose Nkwinka. Let me just give you a brief background of our presenters. Professor Chitiga Mabubu is a director and head of the School of Public Management and Administration at the University of Pretoria. Her interests in research are in the areas of tracing and analyzing the effects of government policies on the broader economy and on the household specifically. And Prof has applied various modeling approaches to answering questions on environmental policies, trade policies, and various socio-economic policies as well. She will be assisted by Rose Nkwinka, who is doing a master's degree student in public administration for the same school in the University of Pretoria. And she has recently submitted a final dissertation entitled An Analysis of the Relationship between Millennium Development Goals 2 and the Developmental State, the case study of South Africa. So on your behalf, I welcome Prof and Rose to come to the table and do their presentation. Let's give them a big clap.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Rose Nkwinka, as I've been introduced. I work within the social development sector, dealing with social grants. Our topic, as it has been introduced, is analysis of the relationship between MDG 2 and a developmental state, a case study of South Africa. The presentation outline will be as follows. We'll introduce the topic, the presentation and the problem statement, objectives, methodology, discussion of results, and conclusion, as well as recommendations. The aim of the study from which this presentation is derived was to establish whether there is a link between achieving Millennium Development Goal 2 and building a developmental state. As we all know, a developmental state strives to capacitate and skill its human resource with the aim of producing a skilled labor force for the advancement and empowerment of the majority of its citizens. The MDGs, which were 8 in total, set minimum standards that should have been met by nations of the world towards meeting developmental needs of their people. You should take note that I addressed that in the past tense because the MDGs came to an end in December last year. Now in their is Sustainable Development Goals. MDG 2, which is the Millennium Development Goal number 2 among these 8, was set to achieve universal primary education and to ensure that by 2015, children everywhere, boys and girls alike, would be able to complete the full course of primary schooling. South Africa aligned its developmental agenda with those of MDGs to deliver on the commitment to provide universal primary education. It seems like it did well, the country, because the MDG's country report of 2010 concluded that South Africa had achieved MDG 2 5 years in advance, which was in 2010. The problem statement, that is the core why the study was undertaken. As the background to the problem statement, through literature, we learned that, and we know that education is the basis to realizing a developmental state. Higher education sector is vital for South Africa to achieve its developmental agenda. I think this relates to all other countries. However, now here is our problem. There's no direct link between achieving MDG 2 and developmental state. Remember, MDG 2 addresses primary education. So this signifies the limitations of MDG 2 as it does not accommodate education further than the primary level. Now, this brings us to the key question. What is the relationship between completing primary education and employment, poverty, and equality status, which are elements of developmental states in South Africa, where the study is being undertaken? We all know that decreasing poverty, unemployment, and inequality is a reflection of the development of the country. We made hypotheses or hunches that one, persons in the age group of 15 to 60 who complete primary education are more likely to be employed than those who fail to do so. Why 15 to 60? Because those are people that fall in the category of being employed, they're employable. Hypothesis 2 is that persons in the age 15 to 60 who complete primary education are less likely to be in a household of below average social economic status than those who do not complete primary education. The research objectives were to conduct theoretical and empirical literature reviews in order to establish connections between MDG2 and developmental state. The other objective was to establish the relationship between completing primary education, employment status, and socio-economic status. The population study is age group 15 to 60. This population is from the Eastern Cape province with estimated population of 3 million plus, and Gauteng province with estimated population close to 8 million. These two provinces were selected purposely because Eastern Cape represents the rural province within South Africa, whereas Gauteng is more of the urban province. We had our data source. Our data source is the 2011 Population and Housing Census of South Africa. Normally we just call it census. And this data was used to identify the targeted population in the age group of 15 to 60, as well as to develop multidimensional socioeconomic status indicators, to analyze association between household socioeconomic status and primary education completion status, as well as to analyze association between the completion of primary education and employment. Methodology. This was a case study employing mixed research method. The reason of mixed research method is because follow-up on quantitative data, which is South Africa Census 2011, those are numbers, was made qualitatively to obtain more detailed information. We also had this.
Sorry, I think you're blocking them from seeing if
Sorry
it
about
is
that.
decided. Okay.
As I said, information. This descriptive statistics in the form of contingency tables was used together with odds ratios for hypothesis testing. Odds ratios were used to determine the relationship between primary education, completion, employment status, and socio-economic status. Education and employment are covered in the census, but we had to generate what we call socio-economic index using principal component analysis. This socio-economic index was developed as a linear function of the following: household asset ownership, e.g., do you have a refrigerator or a radio or a set of dining room tables? Housing characteristics, e.g., number of rooms and type of toilet facilities, and household access to basic services. The principal component analysis model The principal component analysis was used to assign weight to different dynamic household indicators, and then the households were ranked in terms of cut-offs. For the bottom 40%, which was below average household, that's how we rank them. The middle 40%, and those were average households in terms of social economic status, and the top 20% were above average. Now we come to the results. We go to Eastern Cape, where we generated a table, completion of primary education and employment status. With this table, there are numbers which I think you should be looking at. So I don't know if it will be enough for me to interpret the numbers without using them. Because we ran the chi-squared